Hello, my lovely humans. I know I'm behind on the Donna Adleson trial. I was working some 12s on my regular job plus my second job. I just didn't have time to film this week during the week. So it's Saturday, September 6th, and the Donna Adleson case has been over for a couple days now at this point, but I'm going to recap for you in case you didn't catch it at all. But we're going to talk about the defense case in chief. They rested on day 6. The prosecution did. They ended their arguments. It was really fast, but this is the 4th time that they're doing this trial. If you're like the 4th time, the same prosecutors with a lot of the same evidence. There was some new stuff, but a lot of the stuff that was connecting the Rivera and Garcia, Katie Magbanawat, and Charlie Adleson to Donna Adleson, stuff with the police, the neighbors, other witnesses are all some of the same people. So the prosecution has had very similar questions. They just had to tweak them basically to make the connection to Donna Adleson, because that is what this case is about. It's about conspiracy is the main charge. I know that in the order, the first degree is the top one, but the main charge is actually the second one of the conspiracy, because that's what it is. They're saying that Donna Adleson is ultimately the mastermind and responsible on a first degree level for Dan Markel's death because of her instigation and interference with Wendy Adleson and Dan Markel's marriage, and then throughout everything else. The defense had 2 days of main case, which really was only 1 day of actual days 8, 7, and 8 were actually mostly them at sidebars, mostly them going, we're not ready yet, Your Honor. If you could just excuse us for an honor, give us one moment, Your Honor. There were so many pauses and like steps they should have been prepared for. And the reason why they should have been prepared for them is because they started on September 2nd. They had a 3-day weekend. They had a 3-day weekend for their case in chief because the defense rested on the Friday. So they had the whole rest of the day, including Monday, which even though that might be a holiday, you know, some people are like, oh, I don't work at all on holiday. There are some professions, lawyer is one of them, where if they're in the middle of the case and there's always multiple cases going on, like you never have a lawyer. It's very, very rare to have a lawyer who focuses on one case. There's other things going on, other trials that they have to get to and get started with, and depositions, etc. So they had all of that time, and Judge Everett was increasingly angry. He was just constantly just, are you ready, counsel? Where you could tell he was trying to be civil and polite, and judges tend not to go in super hard on defense. They tend to go more at prosecution usually, and that's because if you go too hard in, even if it's for a legitimate reason, it becomes an appellate issue. Judges do not like rulings that they make overturned later on in appeals court. So they try very hard to preserve the record, and whatever they do to admonish the defense, they make it very clear of here's why, here's when. That way, when it goes to appeal, because every criminal whatever thing goes to appeal, that judge wants to make sure that their ruling stays in place as much as possible. They try to avoid appellate issues, because if something goes super wrong, especially against the defense, it could be seen very loosely as a defendant's rights being violated. And that usually ends up with appeal processes, mistrials, etc. Judges do not want that. But he was very clearly upset with how long they were taking with everything. And quite frankly, it seems like they were just calling some witnesses to say they had witnesses to call. The first person who they brought on was Anne. Anne is Donna Adleson's best friend, who was doing her darndest with her best friend duty. She was trying. The problem was her trying was lying. And no, before somebody goes, well, if she was caught lying, isn't that perjury? Well, technically, yes, but usually it's just used for impeachment. Perjury is really, really hard to charge. It's very rare that perjury fully gets charged. The point that Anne was trying to make was, I never heard her say anything bad about Dan Markel. She loved Danny. I mean, she was upset during the divorce and she was siding with her daughter. Of course, any good mother would. She's a good mother. She's a good grandmother. In fact, the night of the murder, she was on the phone with me when Wendy called her. She was so upset. And they're like, we don't have any phone records of you on... Oh, it was on an encrypted app. It was on WhatsApp, is what Anne said. She was like, they often called me on WhatsApp. If you don't know, WhatsApp is very much like Signal. It is an encrypted service. And if you delete things off of your phone, they're not trackable. That's why a lot of like Instagram, DMs, etc. people try to go right to WhatsApp. In case you didn't know that. And she was like, or fiber, like that we had multiple ways of communication. Okay, that's cool, Anne. So she called you on WhatsApp on the night of the murder, July 18th, 2013? Yes, that's right. Wendy called her, told her what happened. She called me. She was so distraught and upset. Cool, the prosecution said on cross-examination. WhatsApp didn't actually make phone, it was text only until March of 2014 or 2015. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put a little thing down here for which one it is. But it was at least not till the following year where WhatsApp made calls. Oh, well, then it must have been Fiverr. Because she assured us several times that it was WhatsApp. But then when that came up, she was like, well, then it must have been Fiverr. They use both. We use both frequently. Okay, Anne. And that was the whole thing. She just kept getting, like, the prosecution just said, what about this evidence? What about this evidence? What about this evidence? And she would just try and backtrack and cover up. And the main prosecutor, Georgia, I don't remember what her last name is, she was just like, no more questions. And then the next big thing that happened, they brought in a tech expert. Oh yeah, the defense brought in their own tech expert who didn't disagree with anything. They did not argue or challenge anything the prosecution said other than, yeah, they didn't delete in their cell records and stuff. They didn't delete duplicates. So they had like 20 something less of actual calls that weren't duplicate calls. They bolstered the prosecution because after Anne got off the stand, they asked her, was there any indication, how often did Anne and Donna Adleson talk on the phone? They talked pretty regularly on regular phone calls, like just phone records picking it up. Yep, that was their main way of communication. They did it sometimes multiple times a day. They texted a lot, just regular things. And it was like, oh, really? Really? How often did they go on WhatsApp? It doesn't seem like, based on the trackable things, that wasn't something they did very often. Oh, okay. Was there any call on July 18th on the regular records? No, there was not. Oh, okay, just double checking. Then, those were the only actual significant things that happened on day 7. On day 8, the significant thing that happened was twice, like, there was witness. There were 3 witnesses, and 2 of them, almost back to back, were violating the sequestration order. For those of you who don't know, when you are sequestered, a sequestration order is that witnesses cannot be in the test room cannot be in the courtroom overhearing other people's things. There is an exception often made for experts. And the reason why there's an exception for experts is because they have to turn in everything ahead of time, so they can be called out like that if they change their testimony significantly, or if they start going in a different direction than what they already opined to, they have to say, here's the report, here's what I tested, here's when I tested it, here's what I'm going to say, here's why. All of that's already been turned over to the other side. All of that's already been turned over to the court. And so it will be very obvious if an expert has changed or altered their testimony or tries to twist their reporting to be in a different direction to align with somebody else's testimony. And most of the time it just doesn't happen. So there can be exceptions to the rule, but usually the exception to the rule is for opposing experts. So the psychological analyst for the prosecution can listen to the psychological analyst of the defense, and the defense psychological analyst can vice versa. And then they can be used, experts can be used as rebuttal witnesses. So after the main case is done, they can be used to answer any clear up questions as to rebut, or like, yeah, I know they said this, but this already explains it, so it negates what they said. Just to get one more thing in with them. However, that was not the case with these two witnesses. One of them claimed to be an expert, but they had not been pre-approved as an expert to be excused from the thing, because she was on the same side. There was Wendy's lawyer. Wendy waived her rights, her attorney-client privilege rights, and her attorney drove everybody nuts. She had the longest testimony, and she was just like, this is the worst attorney. Okay, I know that I made complaints about Donna's attorney with her not tailoring her suits. That's just a personal preference, not a big deal. Woman's doing her best with what she has to work with. Elaine Bredehoff, she just seemed out of her element. But Wendy's lawyer, family and law lawyer, 37 years, don't know how she made it, because she was saying, my sister had this issue, and she just went on talking about other cases she was in that somehow connected to the Adleson case. She was dragging her own sister into it, and then she's like, yeah, I represented my sister. I probably shouldn't have, but I did. And so anyway, that was literally how she said that. She's like, I probably shouldn't have, but anyway. And then she went on and like dragged her sister's divorce into everything. Another family law expert who was listening to that testimony, and the judge was like, and the prosecution wanted her yeeted. They were like, this expert is not allowed on. This other Bailey woman, we don't want her. Get rid of her. Ex-nay her. Which ended up not, like, she didn't get ex-nayed. The judge was like, I am letting the record show that the defense allowed 2 sequestration violations. 2. In the same day. The other one, in case you're wondering, was Tim Kelly. He was a real estate agent for Dan Markel, and at one time he had shown Donna Adleson and Harvey Adleson some houses in Tallahassee, just the one time. The only thing I can think of why the defense brought him in is to try to show that Donna and Dan Markel actually had a cordial relationship and a nice relationship before the divorce, and just to say that, you see, she didn't hate Dan Markel. She was just being a supportive mother and siding with her daughter during the divorce. That's just what any mother would do, is all I can think of. I don't actually know why he seemed kind of pointless. Again, that was one of those, defense just seemed like they were trying to get somebody to have a butt in the witness seat. But Bailey was some tea, okay? Bailey was some spice. She said that she was trying to say that she was there to prove and testify that the Markel divorce, Wendy and Dan's divorce, was not contentious, and that it wasn't contentious to Donna. What about all these emails? She's just an angry mom. I don't think of it as contentious. Divorce isn't a contentious thing. Divorce isn't a contentious thing. Family custody isn't a contentious thing. Georgia literally was going like this. Just, how do you know? How do you know? She was losing it. Because she wanted this expert gone, and like the gloves were off. She was ready to throw down verbally, and she went at her. She was like, how would you know any of that stuff? You're not in the minds of these people. You weren't even their lawyer. You're not involved with them. You just saw. And then to try to defend herself, this Bailey woman, I don't recommend, if you're in the Tallahassee area, getting her as a lawyer either in family law, because she said, the prosecution asked her, did you ever have somebody have an extreme life or death reaction or life or death situation in family and divorce battles? And she was like, well, there was this one guy. He was Indian and his wife filed for divorce, and I guess that's not okay there. And he committed. She was like, yeah, he offed himself. And she's like, but divorce isn't worth that. People get divorced every day. It's not a big deal. And George was like, but it was a big deal to him. It's a big deal to that culture, right? And she's like, yeah, but it's not. But it is to them. Just because it's not to you, just because this is your everyday job, this is not something that people go through every day. And it happens every day with me. Yes, but you're not them. You're not empathetic. So you don't know how these people are feeling. This was the biggest deal in the world to them. And she's like, but it's not a big deal. Just didn't help her case at all. It didn't help Donna at all. It didn't help the defense. So it's like, this is your expert witness who said that she didn't care and didn't think that a divorce to an Indian man was worth, I was like, I'm sorry, are you discriminatory? Or are you like a narcissist sociopath who got into family law? That's my opinion and speculation. The woman was not nice. And Georgia wasn't nice to her. She threw down. And that was actually the last person we had on the witness stand. Now here's what happened that was funny. The defense was asked, do you have any more witnesses? We have no more witnesses. Okay, so since the defense is resting day, we're not resting, Your Honor. How are you not resting? You don't have any more witnesses. If you don't know, evidence cannot just be presented by the lawyer. The lawyer can't just go, here's an email, here's an exhibit. They have to bring it in through a witness, somebody else who was there professionally, socially, something, to be on the stand to introduce evidence. They can't just show up and go, here's the stuff, that's all you need. Video, pictures, emails, etc. all have to come in through a witness. So if you have no more witnesses, you have no more evidence. You're resting your case. Once you run out of witnesses, your case is done. But they were like, oh, well, we need to find out about if Miss Adleson is doing it. It might take to the stand. But we didn't have time to talk to her over this 3-day weekend about it. Donna Adleson ultimately decided, I think after seeing the prosecution, how hard they went in on the experts, I think that she saw that she would not have any kind of a good time trying to talk her way out of or explain her way out of anything. So she said that she was going to maintain her Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent and not incriminate herself or not be cross-examined, and chose not to take the stand. Smartest thing she did this whole time. So the defense rests. There were no rebuttal witnesses. And then we had closing arguments. Closing arguments for the prosecution was basically their opening arguments just saying, vote guilty. You saw the people who said all these main things. They hit up on stuff. And the prosecutor made sure to say their expert doesn't think that divorce means anything to anybody. So how much do you really want to pay attention to her? They threw that expert under the bus so hard and backed it up twice. It was salty, spice, vinegar, acid, all of it. The defense went with Donna Adleson meddled, but she's not a murderer. She didn't pull the trigger, and they were really hard pointing the finger. Wendy should be taken to court, and other people should be taken to court. All these people have already been convicted of the crime. Donna had nothing to do with it. She was just a caring mother. And then she said, we're here because Donna said some bad words. That's literally what the defense said in her closing argument. She straight up said, we're here because Donna Adleson called Dan an effer. It was like, what about the Nazi uniforms? Let's get him. It involves the two of us, the bump. Well, what about all of that stuff? She didn't mention any of that stuff. She was just like, she's a meddling mom who called her divorced ex-son-in-law some bad words. And that's enough to accuse somebody of murder? That's crazy. That's ridiculous to me. I can't even believe we're here. That was the closing argument. I'm not joking. I will link it below so you can watch it yourself if you don't believe me. The jury was out for about 3 hours and 20 minutes, just over 3 hours. Not looking good. When a jury takes less than a day to deliberate, the defendant is in trouble most of the time. It's very rare. And the judge told Donna Adleson, she had already been told 6 times throughout the 9-day trial, almost every day, she had to be told, control your face, you have to remain somewhat neutral, try to keep your emotions in, you can't be exploding and making a scene. Well, Donna really didn't care about any of that because as the judge confirmed that the verdict form was filled out right, he read the form and he said, guilty of first-degree murder, and she just fully exploded. She just went, oh my God! And she acted like she was so upset. No red nose, no red eyes, no splotchy cheeks, not a tear in sight. But she kept on going. Very Amber Heard vibes, older Amber Heard. Just, oh my God! She did it like 3 times. The judge read out the rest of the guilty verdict. She was found guilty on all 3 counts. And if you get first degree in Florida, there is no parole in Florida for that. It's just you get it, it's a life. You don't have a chance for parole. They don't have parole accessibilities. So once she got that one, it didn't matter if they found her not guilty of the other ones. When she got guilty of first degree, she's locked up for the rest of her life. So, I mean, like, what's the judge going to do? Add more time? But what he realistically could do is have her removed from the courtroom for the rest of the proceedings because she's no longer a defendant. She is now a charged, convicted criminal. She no longer has the assumption of innocent till proven guilty. She was found guilty. And so the judge quickly read off the other 2, had the jury excused, and then he got mad and he was like, Mrs. Adleson, I understand this is not the verdict you were probably hoping for, but you will not make a scene in front of this jury again. He laid into her as much as he could while still being in a respectful, even manner. And the reason why he was able to go harder on her here is because she's already convicted. Her appellate rights don't exist anymore. I mean, they sort of do. That's why he was trying to be professional. But she's already been convicted, so he doesn't have to protect much of the record anymore. So that happened. She didn't really listen. We had victim impact statements that day because Dan Markel's mother and father had flown in from Canada. That is where they reside. And again, this was 11 years ago. This is the 5th one that they've had, Dan Markel's murder. And she said she wrote a book. She was happy that I've learned this. Dan Markel there was a law passed in Florida based on Dan Markel, and that is the Markel Act, and it's to stop grandparents from being denied visitation rights. The grandparents in question were his own parents, the Markels, because when Dan Markel passed away, the Adlesons changed the boy's last name. They weren't invited to the bar mitzvah, and they were denied visitation and were completely just kept out of their lives because, again, Donna Adleson was trying to erase Markel from their memories. And she said that she's happy that there was something so that other people don't, like during divorces and contentions, that they are not put through what they were put through. And I know this is unrelated. I love their accents because they didn't sound Canadian. They sounded Boston Canadian. And so I really loved it. They seemed like such sweet people. Both parents asked for the maximum sentence that could be done, which she's going to get life in prison. And then it was hinted at in the after interviews that Wendy Adleson has a very high possibility of being next on the prosecution checklist to this crime. She can't be, the words she says on stand can't be used against her. Everything else can. So she might still get charged. We'll have to wait and see, according to the prosecutor's own words. And that is where we are. That is the end of the Donna Adleson case. Case closed.